Welcome to PLUSone, the series where each month I look at the free games on PlayStation Plus and tell you if they're worth the download. After all, the games may be free, but your time is valuable. Oh boy, September 2018's lineup is huge, possibly the biggest in PS Plus's history, with 6 games for me to look at in total. First up is the big one, Destiny 2, which is hitting PS Plus to promote the launch of its next big expansion, Forsaken. The original Destiny can be credited with bringing the addictive features of the MMO genre to millions of console gamers in the form of a shooter, and I'm sure almost all of you watching this have played it at least a little bit. How does Destiny 2 tweak the original's massively successful formula, if at all? More importantly, is it worth dozens of hours of your time and 75 gigabytes of your precious hard drive space? Let's dive right in and find out. In case any of you haven't played either Destiny game yet, these are online-only first-person shooters set hundreds of years in the future. You take control of a customizable Guardian, chosen by this gigantic sphere called the Traveler to help mankind rebuild its empire and protect its last standing city after a galaxy-wide catastrophe. In this game specifically, the city is attacked by an invading alien force known as the Red Legion, and humanity is left on its back foot. You are tasked with regrouping the remaining Guardians and taking back the city from the Legion's occupation. The main campaign is split up into a handful of different planets and moons, which each contain a large open section of world for you to explore. In each area, you can complete the main quests, one of the game's many side quests, or go around shooting randomly spawning enemies or tackling public events that may pop up. All the while, you'll see a bunch of other players spawn into this shared world. If you want, you can tackle missions or events together, go about your separate ways, or even go into the Crucible, a separate section of the game dedicated to player versus player action. No matter what you choose to do, you're earning experience points for your character, leveling up, and unlocking new perks. More important than the perks, though, are the hundreds of weapons and armor pieces that you'll obtain throughout your adventure. Your weapons and gear are generated as loot, with a wide range of possible stats and rarities. This is usually considered the meat of Destiny, grinding through later game missions to hopefully unlock some of the game's rarest and most powerful weapons. If you've ever played an MMO before, I'm sure this sounds familiar. The key difference here, as I mentioned earlier, is that unlike many MMOs, Destiny 2 is a shooter, and a fun one at that. I'm sure the Destiny diehards will yell at me for saying this, but if you've ever played Halo before, imagine Destiny 2 as a slightly different take on that gameplay style. Obviously that makes sense, considering the developers over at Bungie moved on to Destiny after finishing off their time with the first several Halo games. In fact, I was just playing some Halo 2 Anniversary earlier today, and when I moved back into Destiny to get that last bit of footage, it was eerie how similar the enemy movement patterns are, how similar the grenade arc feels when you're tossing a frag, and of course, how solid the Crucible maps are. I will say that Destiny 2's PvP isn't as great as I would like it to be compared to its older siblings over at Microsoft, but it's still a good time. Hell, even the story feels like it could fit in decently as a Halo game, which is a huge step up from Destiny 1, where so much of the narrative was hidden away from the actual story missions. Speaking of the first game, I actually skipped Destiny 1 because despite being a huge Bungie fan, the mechanics felt a bit weaker to me than I was hoping for coming off of the fantastic Halo Reach. But this game, I don't know what it is, it feels right, and I found myself having a blast. Your movement is so smooth, most of the guns that I used felt distinct even if they were in the same weapon class, and it's never particularly hard, at least in the main quest. You're going to be doing a lot of the same stuff in Destiny 2, plowing through thousands of enemies, often as if they're made of paper, but you're going to enjoy yourself while you're doing it. More importantly, you very likely might get hooked on the loot grind, as you are constantly being given new toys to play with. Now, the game's not without its problems. For one, it's got some pretty lengthy load times. Moving to a new planet, loading a mission, even inexplicably when searching for players in the Crucible, all of these take forever. Thankfully, you can mess around in the character options menus, changing around your armor and weapon loadouts, your perks, whatever you want to do. Even after doing my routine character checks during load times though, I often still had another 15 to 30 seconds left to wait when I was done. That aside though, the only issue that I can warn you about from experience is that the early game content for your first 5 to 10 hours does feel as easy as it does. I didn't find that to be a bad thing though, and I know for a fact it gets so much harder once you move into the endgame content like raids, strikes, nightfalls, and I'm sure many more that I haven't gotten to yet. Even though I've played more of Destiny 2 than I have for any previous PLUSone game, I haven't even scratched the surface of what it has to offer. Now, with all of that said, is this a game that you should download and play? Here's my verdict. This game isn't going to be for everybody, and I think by now you know already, based on what I've said, if it isn't for you. For anybody who hasn't crossed it off completely yet, absolutely, without a doubt, +1 Destiny 2 to your collection. I know the core Destiny fans have a lot of issues regarding the endgame content, but that's something you wouldn't have to even think about for 20 or more hours, and you'd be long done with the campaign by then. Speaking of hours, I would not recommend going for the platinum on this one for you trophy hunters out there, as you've got to be looking at easily 100 hours of playtime, and that's not counting the struggles you might have finding a group of people for the arduous raids. Even if Destiny 1 wasn't for you, just as it wasn't for me, Destiny 2 feels like a redemption, and I think it might have earned that second chance. The last thing I want to note before I go is that the first 2 expansions are on sale for $10 each right now, with the third, Forsaken, having just launched for $40. You do need all of the previous DLC for Forsaken to work, so if you want the newest campaign content, weapons, gear, and all of that other fun stuff, you're still going to have to pay $60 even if the base game of Destiny 2 is free right now. I would suggest you see how hooked you are before dropping a premium on all of that, as I was enjoying myself just fine for the price of free. With all of that said, I've got 5 more games to cover for September's PS Plus lineup, so make sure you subscribe if you want to find out if each of those are right for you. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you hit the like button and share it around, it really does help. And if you want to watch another video, click either of the links right there on your screen.